In the deserts of the American Southwest, where red dust rises under the moon and the wind carries voices through empty canyons, there is one name that even the bravest will not speak after dark: the Skinwalker. To outsiders, it might sound like another campfire myth, but to the Navajo and other native communities, the Skinwalker is no story. It is real, it walks, it watches, and it waits. The very mention of it invites danger, and that fear runs so deep that even those who know the full truth will not say its name out loud. The Skinwalker isn't a creature born from imagination. It's a human soul corrupted by its own hunger for power. The Navajo call it Yinaldlushi, which translates roughly to "with it, he goes on all fours." That phrase captures what it is, which who abandons humanity to take on the form of an animal. But this is no shapeshifter in the Hollywood sense. The Skinwalker doesn't simply turn into a wolf or a coyote by magic alone. The transformation is an act of blasphemy, one that involves dark rituals, forbidden ceremonies, and an irreversible pact with forces that no human should ever touch. To become a Skinwalker, a witch must perform the ultimate tabotake, the life of a close family member. That act of murder severs their connection to the human spirit world and binds them to something darker, something predatory. From that moment on, the person is no longer fully human. They are a... It's important to understand that in Navajo culture, witchcraft isn't just a story about evil magic hits, amoral and spiritual corruption. The traditional medicine men and women use ceremonies and songs to heal, to bring balance, and to connect with nature and the holy people. A witch, on the other hand, does the opposite. They use sacred knowledge to harm, manipulate, and destroy. That's what makes the Skinwalker so terrifying. They are the ultimate betrayal of their own people, someone who once healed, now using that same spiritual power to hunt and curse. When the stories describe them walking on all fours, it's not poetic imagery. People claim to have seen them human figures twisted into unnatural shapes, moving with jerky, animal-like motions. Some describe seeing a man's face inside the body of a wolf, its eyes gleaming with intelligence. Others have seen coyotes standing upright like humans, their fur hanging loosely as if it were just a disguise. These are not full transformations. They're grotesque half-forms, stuck somewhere between the human and the beast. The Skinwalker doesn't truly become an animal, it wears the skin of one, literally. That's where the name comes from. According to Navajo accounts, Skinwalkers make their own disguises from the hides of the animals they wish to mimic. But these skins aren't worn in reverence or respect, like traditional ceremonial garments. They're desecrated, used for deception. When the witch pulls the skin over their body, it allows them to take on the creature's appearance and, in some stories, its ability, speed, strength, senses, and stealth. But the disguise is imperfect, and their eyes always betray them. Even when in animal form, witnesses claim the eyes of a Skinwalker are unmistakably human, and when in human form, their eyes flash like those of an animal caught in the dark. To the Navajo, speaking about Skinwalkers is dangerous because it's believed that acknowledging them draws their attention. They feed on fear and curiosity. Once you talk about them, they can hear you. Once you think about them, they know you. The stories passed down from elders often begin as warnings to stay close to home at night, to never travel alone after sunset, and to avoid strange animals that seem too curious or too intelligent. A coyote sitting perfectly still and watching you from a ridge, a wolf pacing beside your car for miles, or an owl calling your name, all of these could be signs that something unnatural is near. In traditional beliefs, the Skinwalker's power isn't limited to shape-shifting. They are also masters of illusion and deception. They can mimic human voices to lure people outside at night. They can appear as someone you know and trust. Imagine hearing your mother's voice, calling from the dark, or your friend S laughter echoing just beyond the light of your campfire, only to realize that person, ISNT there, the Skinwalker uses that trick to separate the strong from the weak, to isolate its victim. Once you step out to investigate, you may never come back. There are countless accounts from the Southwest of people encountering something they couldn't explain. Ranchers finding animal tracks that shift into human footprints halfway across the field. Drivers on empty highways seeing shapes that run alongside their cars at impossible speeds, keeping up no matter how fast they go. Some describe a creature leaping onto their vehicle, its weight crushing the roof, its claws scraping metal. Others tell of waking up in the night to scratching sounds at the window, or a voice outside their home calling softly sometimes, in a language they understand. Sometimes in one they don't. The fear isn't just superstition. Even modern Navajo communities hold deep respect for these warnings. Skinwalker stories are not entertainment. They're survival knowledge passed down through generations. They remind people to respect the boundaries between the spiritual and the physical, between the human and the animal. When those boundaries are broken, balance collapses in. That's when evil walks. In many stories, the Skinwalker's greatest weapon, ISNT, its claws or teeth the curse it carries. It can spread sickness, misfortune, or madness with a glance or a gesture. Sometimes the victim falls ill without explanation, plagued by nightmares or unexplained dread. Medicine men can identify the source, but confronting a skinwalker is dangerous even for them. Only the most powerful healers can undo the damage, and even then, it may come at great cost. What's chilling is that skinwalkers live among people. They don't hide in distant caves or forests. They can be your neighbor, a relative, or someone you pass in the market. By day, they appear ordinary, blending into the community. By night, they shed their humanity like a snake sheds its skin. That's what makes them so terrifying. You never know who might secretly carry that darkness within. The Skinwalker legend has remained largely unspoken outside the Navajo Nation for centuries because it's considered sacred knowledge, not to be shared lightly. But in recent years, as outsiders have taken interest, especially with tales from places like Skinwalker Ranch in Utah, the line between folklore and investigation has blurred. Paranormal researchers report sightings of fast-moving creatures, glowing eyes, and animal-like figures that vanish without a trace. Locals, however, say that the more people talk about it, the more the land becomes restless. For the Navajo, the story isn't about curiosity or thrills, it's about respect. The Skinwalker represents the dangers of spiritual corruption. It reminds people that power must always be used in balance, never for harm or selfish gain. The line between healer and witch is thin, and once crossed, it can never be undone. Every culture has its monstrous creatures that reflect human fears. But the Skinwalker stands apart because it isn't an external force, it's what happens when humanity itself becomes the monster. It's the consequence of greed, hate, and broken taboos. And that's why, even today, when night falls over the desert and the wind begins to howl, many still whisper a quiet prayer before stepping outside. Because in the darkness, you never know if the coyote you see standing just beyond the headlights is only an animal or something wearing its skin, waiting for you to notice. If you want to keep uncovering the darker side of ancient legends and the truths hidden beneath them, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to Belmoze. There are still many shadows left to explore, and together, we'll keep walking the line between myth and reality, one terrifying story at a time. In Navajo belief, there is no greater sin, no darker stain upon the soul, than taking the life of your own kin. Family is sacred. It is the living bond that connects the individual to the ancestors and the spiritual world. To break that bond, willingly to kill someone of your own blood is to tear apart the natural order itself. That is the act that creates a skinwalker. Not born of evil, but made by it. A person who once lived among others, laughed, healed, hunted, and prayed, chooses to cross a line that no one should ever cross. It is not done in anger or desperation, but as a ritual, a deliberate, conscious offering to darkness in exchange for power. In many versions of the story, the transformation begins with corruption long before the act of murder. The one who becomes a skinwalker starts by learning sacred ceremonies, often under the guidance of a medicine man. But where the healer uses this knowledge to restore harmony, the future which uses it to dominate. They twist chants meant to protect into curses that harm. They seek shortcuts to power, craving control over life and death. In the Navajo worldview, this desire itself is dangerous. Power must be balanced with humility. The moment a person hungers to use it for themselves rather than for others, they open the door to something unnatural. To complete the transformation, that person must perform the unthinkable. They must kill someone close often, a sibling, a parent, or a child. This act breaks the most sacred bond, the one between spirit and blood. By doing so, they sever their connection to the holy people, the benevolent spirits of creation, and instead bind themselves to the dark. The Navajo see this act not only as physical murder, but as spiritual suicide. It is the destruction of one's humanity in exchange for raw, chaotic power. From that moment forward, the witch is no longer part of the human community. They have chosen exile not just from society, but from the natural balance of the world. The ceremony that follows is whispered about but rarely described. It involves forbidden songs, twisted versions of sacred chants, and offerings that defile instead of purify. Some say the witch coats their body in ashes from burned bones. Others that they use the blood of their victim to mark their skin with symbols of transformation. The animal hides they wear are not decorative. They are the tools of the ritual. By wearing the skin of a coyote, wolf, or bear, the witch invites the spirit of that creature into themselves, merging human cunning with animal instinct. The choice of animal often reflects the witch's intent. Coyotes are tricksters, masters of deception, and favored by those who wish to move unseen. Wolves are hunters, relentless and strong, suited to those who seek domination. Bears, powerful and territorial, embody physical strength and rage. Some even take to the skies, wearing the feathers of an owl or raven, allowing them to move silently above their prey. But no matter the form they choose, the cost is the same: their soul becomes unrecognizable. In Navajo teachings, everything in the world has a balance: day and night, creation and destruction, life and death. Medicine men maintain this balance through healing rituals. Witches destroy it through acts of violation. The Skinwalker's transformation is the final collapse of that balance. They become beings of pure disruption, walking embodiments of imbalance and death. Their power is immense but unstable, fueled by the very taboo that created them. It is said that the more evil acts a Skinwalker commits, the stronger they grow, but also the less human they remain. Imagine this transformation not as a sudden flash of magic, but as a gradual decay of humanity. Their voice begins to change, growing guttural, animal-like. Their eyes lose warmth. They become restless, unable to sleep under the same roof for long, drawn to the wilderness where human laws no longer hold. At night, when the wind howls, they move across the desert on all fours, their limbs contorted in unnatural shapes. Witnesses describe seeing figures that shift between man and beast, as if trapped in a state of constant metamorphosis. The process of shapeshifting is not effortless or graceful. It is said to be painful: bones, breaking skin, tearing joints, twisting as the body reconfigures itself. The witch sheds human flesh like a snake sheds its skin, but instead of renewal, it is rebirth into corruption. Some legends even say that a Skinwalker must keep the skin of the animal nearby, ready to slip into it when needed. If someone were to find and destroy that skin, they could rob the witch of their power. That is why these creatures are said to guard their hides with obsessive care, hiding them in caves, under rocks, or in places that no one dares to tread. The transformation also grants the Skinwalker access to heightened senses. They can hear the faintest sound miles away, smell the fear of their prey, and move silently through even the densest terrain. But their true weapon lies in mimicry. They can reproduce the voice of anyone they've heard: friends, family, children. This ability is not simply trickery, it's psychological warfare. Imagine being alone at night in the desert and hearing your brother's voice calling for help, even though you know he's safe miles away. The Skinwalker uses the sound to lure victims out of safety, to isolate them in the dark, where the wind hides all other noise. There are many stories of people who've encountered them, and though details differ, one thing remains the same: fear. A man driving home late at night might see something in the rearview mirror, running on all fours beside his car, keeping pace even as he speeds up. A woman might hear knocking at her door and a familiar voice calling her name, only to find no one there when she opens it. In some accounts, the Skinwalker leaves behind footprints that shift between human and animal shapes, as if the creature can't decide which world it belongs to. The moral weight of the taboo runs deep. For the Navajo, such an act doesn't just curse the individual, it infects the land around them. Areas where Skinwalkers are said to dwell often become places of dread. Animals behave strangely, crops fail, and sickness spreads. The earth itself rejects the presence of the witch. It's as if nature tries to heal by pushing the corruption away. Even today, certain parts of the Southwest canyons, plateaus, and remote mesas carry reputations as Skinwalker territory. Locals avoid them, especially at night, believing that the witches still move there, watching from the shadows. Despite their terrifying reputation, the Skinwalker's story isn't simply one of horror, it's one of consequence. It shows what happens when a person values power over compassion, dominance over connection. The killing of a family member symbolizes the death of all that binds humans together: love, loyalty, and community. Once those bonds are broken, the witch becomes a hollow vessel, driven only by hunger for more. The story of the Skinwalker has survived, not because it entertains, but because it warns. It is a reminder that the line between healer and destroyer, protector and predator, is drawn not by ability, but by intent. In every culture, there are those who misuse what is sacred for selfish gain. The Navajo gave that corruption a physis shape that prowls the night, wearing the skin of the innocent it imitates. When people speak of the Skinwalker, they don't do so lightly. Every word carries risk. Every telling is a brush with the forbidden. And though modern skeptics might dismiss the legend as superstition, those who live on that land, who hear the coyotes cry and see strange shadows moving against the moonlit sand, know better. They know that some taboos exist for a reason, and that once broken, they cannot be mended. The creation of a Skinwalker is not an act of nature, it's an abomination against it. It is a story of power gained through loss, of humanity willingly sacrificed to the dark. And as long as people hunger for control, the legend warns. There will always be those willing to kill what they love most to seize it. What makes the Skinwalker so chilling is not that it hides in the wilderness or lurks in the shadows of the desert that it can live right beside you. The true horror of this legend lies in its familiarity. The Skinwalker is not a beast from another realm or an alien creature. It's human. It's someone who once lived, loved, and walked among others in the same community. Someone who might still appear to do so. The idea that evil can exist in the face you recognize, in the voice you trust, is what gives the Skinwalker legend its enduring, bone-deep terror. Among the Navajo, the Skinwalker is feared not as a distant myth, but as an ever-present threat. The creature doesn't just roam the desert searching for prey. It moves through the same spaces as ordinary people. It can mimic human voices with uncanny precision, a talent that makes it both hunter and deceiver. Imagine walking alone through the night and hearing your mother's voice calling your name. Soft and worried, echoing through the darkness. You follow the sound, expecting to see her only, to find nothing but the rustling of leaves and a cold wind. That's how it begins. The mimicry isn't a trick of chance, it's deliberate. The Skinwalker uses trust as bait. This ability to imitate human voices isn't limited to loved ones. Some stories say Skinwalkers can also reproduce animal sounds or even cries of distress, like a baby's wail or a wounded animal's call. The goal is always the same: to draw you out from safety, to pull you toward the darkness. This skill is what makes them particularly terrifying. You never know if what you're hearing is real or if something unnatural is using the sound to lead you astray. In a landscape as vast and isolating as the American Southwest, where the silence itself can be unnerving, that uncertainty is enough to unravel the mind. But their danger goes far beyond mimicry. Skinwalkers are said to bring sickness, misfortune, and death through curses and dark rituals. Unlike spirits that strike at random, they choose their targets carefully, often out of revenge or jealousy. Some tales describe them stealing personal objects, locks of hair, pieces of clothing, or footprints in the dirt to use in harmful spells. Once they have something that carries your essence, they can use it to make you ill or to haunt your dreams. In communities where these beliefs remain strong, sudden, unexplained sickness can still be attributed to witchcraft. The Skinwalker becomes not just a physical threat, but a spiritual one, something that invades from the inside out. This belief ties into one of the most unsettling parts of the legend: the Skinwalker's ability to blend in. They are not creatures of another species. They are witches hiding in plain sight. That means anyone could be one: a neighbor, a healer, a friend, or even a relative. The fear of the familiar creates paranoia in the community because there's no way to be certain who might secretly possess such power. It's not uncommon for people to grow suspicious of others who act strangely, live alone, or seem too knowledgeable about the supernatural. Even those who practice good medicine, the real healers, can be accused of being witches if something goes wrong after a ceremony. This mistrust extends into everyday life. In traditional Navajo society, it's taboo to talk about Skinwalkers openly, because doing so is believed to draw their attention. That silence reinforces their power. People whisper the word Yinaldlushi only when absolutely necessary, and even then, they lower their voices. Outsiders might think that makes the legend superstitious, but within the culture, it's an act of protection. Naming something gives it power, and the Skinwalker already has enough of it. One of the most disturbing aspects of the Skinwalker-esque legend is its connection to death and desecration. Some stories say that skinwalkers dig up graves to steal bones, using them in rituals or as tools to curse the living. Others claim they consume the ashes of the dead to gain strength. This defilement of the sacred boundary between life and death is another reason they are considered abominations. In Navajo belief, the body must be treated with respect after death. To violate a grave is to shatter the harmony between the physical and spiritual worlds. When a witch commits such acts, they invite chaos not only upon themselves, but upon the land. Imagine this terror within a small, tight-knit community. People start hearing strange noises at night, scratching at windows, footsteps on rooftops, the low growl of an animal that shouldn't be there. Livestock begin to disappear. Shadows move in ways that don't make sense. Someone's child falls suddenly ill, and no healer can cure them. Fear spreads quietly, and eyes turn toward anyone who seems different, anyone with knowledge of forbidden things. The Skinwalker legend thrives in this atmosphere of tension, feeding on the thin line between superstition and survival. Modern accounts keep the legend alive, often blending old tradition with new experiences. Some ranchers in Utah and Arizona tell stories of creatures running alongside their vehicles, keeping pace at impossible speeds before vanishing into the night. Others describe seeing animals with disturbingly human features, size that seem aware, expressions that linger too long. There are even tales of strangers who appear at doors late at night, asking for help in voices that sound almost right, but not quite. Those who know the stories never answer. They say if you open the door, you'll find nothing human waiting. This blending of human and inhuman traits is what cements the Skinwalker as one of the most terrifying beings in North American folklore. It doesn't attack from outside the village. It rises from within it. It uses trust as a weapon, love as a lure, and familiarity as camouflage. The horror isn't T in its claws or its teeth it. S in the moment you realize that the voice calling you from the dark sounds exactly like someone you love. In the broader cultural sense, the Skinwalker serves as a metaphor for hidden corruption within the community. It represents betrayal from within, a reminder that evil isn't always an external force. Sometimes it wears a friendly face, speaks with a familiar voice, and shares your fire. The Navajo stories capture this truth in their most visceral form. They warn that power can twist even the best intentions, and that those who seek dominance or revenge can become the very thing they fear. This is why skinwalkers remain such potent symbols of dread. They embody the fear that no matter how safe your home feels, danger can still come from someone you know. It's not the stranger in the night who terrifies most it. The possibility that the evil has already stepped through the door, wearing the face of a friend. Even today, among the canyons and mesas of the American Southwest, the silence at night carries more than wind. Locals avoid whistling after dark for fear of drawing attention. Dogs bark at unseen things, and travelers sometimes swear they see shapes moving just beyond the reach of headlights. To those who live there, the Skinwalker is not folklore. It's a reminder that darkness doesn't always come from the outside. Sometimes it begins within. When a Skinwalker takes on the form of an animal, it is never quite right. The disguise is convincing at first glance, but something always feels off. Maybe it's the way the creature moves to fluid in some moments, to jerky in others. Or maybe it's the eyes, glowing red like burning coals in the dark eyes that seem to think, to watch, to calculate. Those who have claimed to see a Skinwalker in its animal form all describe the same sickening feeling deep in their gut, the sense that what they are looking at isn't just wrong, but impossibly wrong, as if the body and the spirit occupying it don't belong together. In Navajo stories, the Skinwalker can take on the form of any animal it desires, but certain creatures are more common. Coyotes, wolves, foxes, owls, and crows are frequent disguises. These animals are deeply symbolic. They're creatures of both wisdom and trickery, respected and feared in native tradition. But when a Skinwalker wears their form, it's not out of reverence, it's desecration. The transformation is achieved through dark ceremonies that pervert sacred rituals once meant for healing and protection. Instead of communing with animal spirits, the witch enslaves them, twisting their power for selfish and violent purposes. Imagine walking alone on a desert road at night, the moon faint, and the air cold enough to sting your lungs. You see what looks like a coyote up ahead, standing in the middle of the dirt path. At first, it doesn't move. You take a few steps closer, expecting it to dart off. But it doesn't. It stands there, staring. The longer you look, the less it seems like a real animal. Its legs are too long, its head tilts at an unnatural angle, and its eyes, those burning eyes, don't blink. Then, slowly, it takes a step forward. Not on 4 legs, but on 2. The sight freezes you where you stand, because in that moment, you realize that whatever this thing is, it's pretending to be alive. Stories like this aren't rare in the American Southwest. They come from ranchers, travelers, and even police officers who patrol the lonely highways at night. Many accounts describe the same eerie details: the creature's unnatural speed, the way it seems to appear and disappear at will, and the feeling of overwhelming dread that follows an encounter. Some witnesses say they've seen animals running alongside their vehicles at impossible speeds, keeping perfect pace even at 70 miles per hour. When they finally look closer, they notice the animal's face is wrong, its eyes too human. Its mouth curled into a grotesque, knowing smile. This blend of animal and human features creates what psychologists call the uncanny valley, the disturbing reaction people have when something looks almost human, but not quite. Our brains are wired to recognize familiar shapes and faces, and when those shapes are slightly off, it triggers deep unease. In the context of Skinwalker encounters, this reaction is magnified by fear, isolation, and the eerie setting of the desert night. It's not just the creature's form that's terrifying, it's how it distorts what we trust our senses to tell us. There are also reports of the Skinwalker smell a stench of rot and decay that clings to the air long after it's gone. It's described as the odor of death, something so foul it makes people gag or feel physically sick. Animals react to it too. Dogs whine, bark, or hide when the scent lingers near a property. Horses become restless, refusing to go near certain areas. The smell, like the creature itself, seems to move with intent, as if marking territory or warning off intruders. The most chilling detail, though, comes from those who claim to have heard the Skinwalker's voice. It's said that in animal form, the creature can still produce sounds. No animal should make human-like laughter, distorted speech, or cries that echo with unnatural rhythm. Some say it calls people by name, using a voice that sounds almost right, but carries a strange echo, like 2 tones layered together. Others describe hearing laughter, high broken, and hollow coming from a shape crouched in the dark. These are not the exaggerated screams of horror stories. They are small, deliberate sounds that crawl under the skin and stay there. This voice is part of the Skinwalker's deception. It uses sound the way a spider uses a web to pull in its prey. Travelers in remote areas sometimes report hearing voices calling for help, only to find no one there. The sound comes again, closer this time, maybe behind them, maybe from the shadows. The fear builds because deep down, they know something human shouldn't be moving that fast or sounding that close. By the time realization hits, it's already too late. The Skinwalker doesn't hunt with brute strength alone. It hunts with fear, using confusion and imitation to break its victims before it strikes. In Navajo culture, this behavior isn't just a supernatural legend, it's symbolic. The Skinwalker's imitation of life mirrors its spiritual corruption. Having abandoned humanity through dark deeds, it can only mimic what it once was. Its voice, its form, its movements all are imitations, imperfect reflections of the real thing. That's what makes them terrifying. They're echoes of what once was human, twisted by greed and power until nothing true remains. Even its speed and strength are unnatural. Skinwalkers are said to run faster than any living creature, crossing vast distances in minutes. Some stories describe them sprinting on all fours, moving with a jerky rhythm, bones popping and twisting beneath their shifting skin. Others say they can leap over high fences or climb cliffs with ease, vanishing into the dark like smoke. Hunters who have tracked strange prints in the snow or dirt report seeing tracks that suddenly change from human footprints to animal prints mid-trail, as if the transformation happens on the move. These impossible movements are central to the legend sphere. They make the creature untouchable beyond reason or control. You can't predict it, can't outrun it, and can't shoot it. In fact, Navajo tradition teaches that killing a Skinwalker is almost impossible. Only a weapon dipped in white ash or blessed through ritual can harm it, and even then, the risk is great. Some say that the witch's spirit can transfer into another body upon death, ensuring that the evil never truly dies. The landscape itself amplifies this terror. The deserts and mesas of the Southwest are vast and isolating, with sound carrying in strange ways. Coyotes cry in the distance, their calls overlapping and echoing, often sounding disturbingly human. Wind sweeps across canyons, turning whispers into ghostly voices. To someone walking alone under the wide, cold sky, the difference between a natural sound and something else can blur easily. It's in this environment that the Skinwalker legend feels most alive, feeding on the space between what's real and what might be. But perhaps the most disturbing part of the legend is that it persists. Modern sightings are still reported near reservations, highways, and rural properties. Videos circulate online showing strange animals with humanoid movements, distorted faces, or glowing eyes that reflect more like mirrors than flesh. While skeptics dismiss these as tricks of light or imagination, for those who know the old stories, the evidence isn't so easily brushed away. For them, the Skinwalker isn't a mythidus, a reminder that evil can take any form it wishes, and sometimes it wears the face of something familiar. The unsettling animal form of the Skinwalker is more than a disguise. It is a reflection of inner corruption. It's what happens when humanity is stripped away and replaced by hunger for power. In the flickering eyes of that creature, glowing from the darkness, the message is clear. What you see isn't just a monster, it's what's left when someone trades their soul for strength. And when it moves toward you, step by step, in that too human way, you realize the truth that chills you to the bone. It's not pretending to be human. It remembers being one. Among the Navajo, there are few subjects treated with more fear and silence than the Skinwalker. It's not a campfire story, not a legend to entertain tourists or thrill seekers. It's something you don't talk about unless you have to. Even then, you choose your words carefully. You speak softly, avoid names, and never linger on the details. Because according to those who live closest to this belief, the very act of talking about a Skinwalker, saying its name, describing its form, even thinking about it too much, can call its attention. That's why elders often change the subject or fall into long silences when the topic comes up. To them, this isn't superstition, it's self-preservation. This deep fear is rooted in generations of experience. In Navajo tradition, stories aren't told to entertain. They're told to teach, to warn, to pass down knowledge that helps people survive. So when entire families and communities treat something with this much caution, it means they believe the danger is real. A Skinwalker isn't just a symbol of evil. It's a living reminder of what happens when someone turns their back on harmony, on balance, on the sacred laws that keep the world in order. Talking about it isn't brave, it's foolish, because to acknowledge the Skinwalker is to invite it closer, and once it takes notice, it doesn't easily let go. People raised in Navajo communities describe how even casual conversation can fall quiet when someone mentions the word. The silence that follows isn't awkward, it's heavy, as if the air itself changes. Elders might glance toward the door or out the window, checking the shadows. Someone might mutter a short prayer or scatter ashes into a fire, a small act of protection to undo the risk that speaking the word created. This quiet fear becomes part of daily life, shaping how stories are told and how much is revealed. Outsiders often mistake this silence for secrecy, but it's actually a form of respect for the danger these beings represent. To understand why, you have to look at the Navajo worldview. In their belief system, everything in existence is connected: humans, animals, the land. Harmony, known as HSH, is the balance that keeps these connections healthy. When someone breaks this balance through greed, hate, or dark ritual, the result is chaos. The Skinwalker represents that chaos. It's not just a witch, it's the embodiment of what happens when a person willingly steps outside the circle of harmony and uses power for harm. Because of that, speaking its name risks breaking the same balance, giving the darkness a doorway to enter. Some Navajo people want to even discuss the creature with family members, unless something strange has already happened, animals acting wrong. Noises in the night, shadows moving where they shouldn't. Even then, they talk in whispers or in metaphor. Instead of naming it, they might say, "Something's out there," or "the one that walks on 4 legs." The words act like a shield, keeping the real name hidden. In traditional thought, names hold power. To name something is to call it, to draw its attention. That's why the rule is simple. Don't name it, and don't look for it, because once it knows you're aware of it, it might decide to make itself known to you. This fear doesn't only live in old stories, it shapes real behavior today. Many Navajo people avoid traveling alone at night, especially through certain areas known for strange sightings. The region near the Four Corners, where Arizona, Utah, Colorado, and New Mexico meet, is often mentioned in whispered tones. Ranchers there report lights in the desert that move against the wind, the sound of footsteps on rooftops, and animals found mutilated without a trace of blood. Some families won't whistle after dark, believing the sound can summon unwanted spirits. Others refuse to take photographs in certain places, afraid that something unseen might appear beside them in the picture. To outsiders, these precautions might seem extreme, but within the culture, they're acts of survival. Generations have lived with these beliefs, and those who break the rules often become the cautionary tales themselves. A story might begin with someone who laughed at the warnings, who went into the desert to prove there was nothing to fear. They might have returned, shaken, pale, and unwilling to speak about what they saw. Or they might not have returned at all. These are not horror stories for entertainment, they're reminders that some knowledge carries a price. Even anthropologists and journalists who try to document Skinwalker lore often struggle to get people to talk. Interviews fall silent, promises of anonymity don't help. Sometimes, the only information they get comes in fragments, half-sentences, unfinished thoughts, or long pauses filled with the sound of wind over the desert. One reporter described how an elder agreed to speak about skinwalkers only under one condition: that the interview be done in daylight, far from the edge of the reservation. When asked why, the elder simply said, "They listen at night." This fear has given rise to one of the most chilling aspects of the Skinwalker legend: its authenticity. Unlike fictional monsters born in books or movies, the Skinwalker exists in the living memory of a culture that still believes in its power. It isn't a myth created for outsiders, it is a truth guarded by those who have inherited it. That's what makes it one of the most powerful pieces of American horror. It doesn't need blood or violence to terrify. The silence alone, the unwillingness to speak, is proof enough of its weight. There are stories of people who ignored that silence and paid the price. A man might joke about skinwalkers around a fire, mocking the stories. Later that night, he hears scratching on his window. He looks outside and sees a shape watching from the edge of the property, a coyote standing on two legs, its eyes glowing in the dark. Another person might record strange noises on their property and post them online, only for their electronics to start failing, their animals refusing to go outside, their nights filled with whispers. Whether you believe in the supernatural or not, the pattern is the same. Those who invite the legend too close end up regretting it. In some ways, this fear serves a purpose. It teaches caution, humility, and respect for forces beyond human control. It keeps people from wandering too far into the unknown or treating sacred things carelessly. The Skinwalker, for all its horror, is a reminder of balance, how easily it can be lost, and how dearly it must be protected. It warns that not all power is meant to be used, and not all stories are meant to be told. Yet, even with all this fear, the fascination persists. People outside the culture can't help but be drawn to the mystery, the danger, the silence that surrounds it. But to truly understand the legend, one must respect where it comes from. It's not a ghost story to be consumed. It's a living belief held by real people, people who have learned that some names are better left unspoken. So, when you hear the word Skinwalker, remember that for many, it isn't just folklore, it's a warning whispered through generations. Carried in the wind that moves across the mesas and in the quiet spaces between words, a warning that says, speak carefully, listen closely, and never forget that what you name might be listening to. If you've made it this far into the story, you've stepped into a world where silence speaks louder than words, and where fear is a form of respect. There are few legends as haunting, as sacred, or as deeply rooted in truth as this one. And if you want to explore more stories that reveal the dark corners of history and belief, then make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to Belmoze, where silence, mystery, and truth all share the same shadow.